The 2021 NHL offseason has been one for the ages. So many big names have found new homes. Dougie Hamilton to the Devils, a top 10 D-man in the entire league, finding a spot in a D-corps that definitely needs his help. Zach Hyman to the Edmonton Oilers, a guy who has been known for playing on Austin Matthews' wing, gets a chance to help out Connor McDavid in that very same position. But those are moves that we all know about. Big deals, yes, day one moves. But also there are some underrated deals that have been made in the offseason. Victor Arvidsson to the LA Kings, for example, earlier in the offseason. But also the most underrated free agent sign. And that's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. So without further ado, let's get into it. You're probably thinking I'll say someone like Philip Danault, a guy who had the biggest role besides Carey Price in the Canadiens' playoff run. But the player that we're going to discuss didn't play in the playoffs. The New Jersey Devils' newest forward, Tomas Tatar. Before you click off this video, give me a chance to explain. As a Habs fan, I might be in the minority here, but I loved Tatar on the Canadiens. He was a goal scorer on the best top line in hockey, the Tatar-Danault Galley line. It was unstoppable. Their defensive play was such a treat to watch, and how Philip Danault didn't win a Selke with the Canadiens is honestly mind-blowing. Tatar specifically had an elite transitional play. A lot of players on the team under Julian dumped the puck in, but controlled possessions were so key for the top line. Even if they did dump it in, they had the perfect mix on that trio. Gallagher brought a strong forecheck, Tatar finished, and Danault could go both ways down the ice. I believe any spot Tomas Tatar goes into with the Devils, he will succeed. But the reason I bring up the Tatar-Danault-Gallagher line is because of the mistreatment of Tatar that led to him leaving in free agency. He was a big part in the top line, but Ducharme didn't like him for some reason. Scratching your best winger anytime is stupid, but especially in the playoffs. But it's something to be expected from Ducharme and Bergevin. KK, Caulfield, Tatar, Kulak, and Romanov should not have sat a single game throughout the playoffs. How they got so far without some of those guys was a shock. The Canadiens were poorly managed this year. We saw that in the draft and now in free agency. But also the on-the-ice play. The line combinations that Ducharme put together and defensive pairings made absolutely no sense. Tatar getting out of Montreal is the best thing for him personally, and I don't hold any grudges when a player leaves. I saw a lot of the fan base turning against Max Domi when he was traded. I saw a lot of people turn against Philip Danault just recently when he left in free agency to the LA Kings. But I honestly just thank them for what they did with the team. And Tatar and Danault were both huge pieces in the club, and I would have left if I was in their situation too. New Jersey is going to be a great fit for Tuna, but let's talk about what makes this move so underrated. Tatar is an analytical darling, as seen here on the screen in this chart from JFresh Hockey. In the far right, you see the offense-defense finishing graph. You can see how he has stayed consistent with his offensive play, and his quality of competition is very high. Going against players like Matthews and Marner every night, that would be expected. But his defense has got better, back to solid this year, and he is higher than 94% of players in wins above replacement, which is absolutely insane, and especially on the contract he's on. He was the top winger on the open market this year and fills the Devils' needs perfectly. His underlying numbers have been solid despite struggling last year. He's still put up 30 points in 50 games. which is insane considering how injured his line mates were throughout the year and how many times he was juggled around after Ducharme took over. His 2 prior years with the Canadiens, he had really good point production, but as you saw from that chart earlier, he wasn't the best finisher. But that was expected on a team like the Canadiens. They had a ton of chances, especially that top line, and couldn't bury them. They had a monkey on their back at the start of the season, but managed to pull it off later and finally break through, scoring some goals. We know Tatar became a new player in Montreal after being a part of the infamous Max Pacioretty trade, and he will be greatly missed by the Habs. But the Devils are, as I mentioned, getting the top winger on the market in free agency this year, and he's going to fit perfect. He's going on to a young core, and he's only 30 years old, just entering some of his prime years in the NHL. Looking at another chart shows us how good Tatar's expected numbers are, and that's where some of the finishing chances come into play. If he can bury these chances, Tatar could go on a 30-goal run this year. This chart is from South_Korea on Twitter, and it shows a lot about how Tatar is as a player. And let's talk about what a steal of the contract he is on. $4.5 million a year for Tatar is something that, as a Habs fan, I would love to have over the same annual average value for Mike Hoffman. Tatar has developed into a guy that can take some defensive responsibilities. If he gets top 6 minutes with perhaps Nico Hischier in New Jersey, you could see him become a great scoring winger again, but also his passes are nothing to joke about. He can set up a guy for a one-timer and potentially be a huge part of that Devils' second power play unit. And not to even mention how good he is in a tight area. When Tatar gets a breakaway, he rarely ever misses. He's automatic from that zone and can turn anything into anything there. He can be given an inch and still be able to deke around the goaltender and put it in the back of the net. Tuna will have a full-time role with the Devils, which excites me from being a fan of the player Tomas Tatar. And he's an extremely underrated player. A playmaking winger is harder to find today in the league than you would think, especially on the free agent market, wanting that little amount of money. And a guy who is responsible for 200 feet of the ice is the player that you want on your team, especially a young core. And he's going to enter that young core and bring some experience, but also learn from other guys. I might sound biased by saying that Tatar is so underrated, but he is. And considering the pickup of Tyler Toffoli last year, who was top 5 in goals this season, and he didn't sign almost a week into free agency, makes you know that sometimes the best players don't go on day one, and that the Devils have definitely found a gem so late in free agency already. What the Devils have done this offseason, getting Dougie Hamilton, Ryan Graves, and now Tomas Tatar, has a lot of people thinking about the 2019 New Jersey Devils, when they went all out. But now with a better goaltending, with Mackenzie Blackwood, and better defense, obviously revamping an entire new top pair, I think the New Jersey Devils are a lock to make the playoffs. And Tomas Tatar can get up to a 30-goal, 50-point pace this season. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure that you leave a like and subscribe. Thank you guys for the outpouring amount of support on the Sebastian Cossa video. I just made that because I really wanted to talk about my favorite prospect in the draft. And yeah, it really did well. So thank you guys for that. Leave a like on this video, check out my football channel, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.